So about ordination, how necessary is it to officially ordain as a Buddhist monk in order to practice the Dhamma?
Hmm. Uh, it's in itself, it's not. It's not necessary to go through like the formal ordination and acceptance and so on. What is necessary is the lifestyle. So the lifestyle that's free from householders' concerns. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's necessary for like a complete liberation from suffering. So, of course, there's a greater likelihood you're going to find the suitable or have access to suitable environment for practice that's free from household life concerns if you're a monk or a nun. At least theoretically, you have a better chance because the ordained lifestyle generally into like a say the practice tradition, just like a temple tradition, is better than crowded and dusty lifestyle of a householder. But that's not necessarily so. In a sense, you might ordain, you might join a community and be equally busy and full of daily concerns about running the temple and duties and all sorts of stuff that can then seem justified in doing because, oh well, look, this is for the greater good of Dhamma or the monastery, but in reality the motivation is the same as it is of a householder who is just being busy around and just doing random stuff to keep himself occupied. So that's pretty much the distinction that a person needs to make. If I were to ordain, would that improve my circumstances? Would that provide better grounds for keeping the Vinaya, better seclusion, more time for reflection? Or would it sort of not really meet those requirements? Or sometimes you might not be able to find something that would be so like a black and white, good or bad. It might be something in between, such as, well, he's not providing as much seclusion as I would want, he's not providing as much as basis, but it has potential to do so more than my current living situation. Then it's still better to ordain. But in and of itself, wearing robes or whatever really makes no difference. It's just an external statement, that's it. Internally makes no difference.
Yeah. Because I was thinking, like, what's really necessary is going forth, as in being prepared to leave the household life.
Yeah.
But that's...
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that necessarily sort of implies, wearing robes and being a Buddhist monk. And in some cases, like I'm even thinking, if you just look purely at the lifestyle, you can see certain people as, not monks, but just living certain kind of lifestyles that are quite solitary or quite kind of remote, and that
quieter, less crowded, less distracting. No, definitely. But I think what is pretty much probably the main thing here is the intention of the person doing it. Because we can you can have argument for both sides. You can say, no, it's still better to be a monk, or you can say, well, no, see, if my household life is actually quieter, more secluded, more remote, it's better to be that. Well, again, in and of itself, it's not a decisive factor. What is decisive factor is your reasons behind choosing to do whatever you choose to do. So you can have people who might have a very good lay conditions, quiet, remote, not crowded, plenty of time to practice. However, all of that life is still rooted in simply being afraid to let go of your environment. So you can say the environment is externally extremely suitable for practice of Dhamma, internally it isn't. because it's all based on the intention of you refusing to give up out of fear or whatever it is. Equally, you can have somebody giving everything up in like a finger snap, committing unwavering determination to become a monk, yet all it's rooted in this quite common view that people have, which is, as long as I become a monk, join the monastery, wear the robes, that's it. Practice will from then onwards be done by the environment. All I need to do is get there, and then I'm sort of safe or something like that. And that's also not the case. And that's entire ordination there is rooted in completely wrong reason. So the intentions behind doing it is probably the most important, to be clear about that. And then you would know why you're not ordaining, and you would know why you're staying a layman, or you would know why you're not staying a layman and why you're ordaining. You wouldn't use one to kind of avoid the other or cover responsibility for it.
Because what's interesting also, like, you become a Buddhist monk, and now there's all sorts of things you don't do or you do, and that are sort of automatically justified in your certain environment because now you're a Buddhist monk. That's something I find interesting. It's like, whereas if you're not a Buddhist monk as a layperson, doing things like, for example, practicing sense restraint, spending time in seclusion, not engaging in all sorts of things, you really have to be sure about why you're doing them, or you have to work harder in a way to make it clear to yourself why you're doing them, instead of, I'm a monk and this is what monks do.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like that can become an excuse then. Then the monks would then be practicing sense restraint, keeping the rules, adhering to all sorts of observances out of a sense of duty, not out of a sense of that, taking responsibility for it. And then that means as soon as that environment changes, your context will be compromised, and you don't want that. I mean, if you have any wisdom, you realize, no, my practice should be developing me in a way that where even if my circumstances change, even if I end up in a hospital or a monastery gets destroyed or I have to whatever, internally composure will not change. I will not depend on these circumstances that are quite, tailored and protective of certain sets and routines, and then that kind of allow me to sort of just, stop thinking about it. And that's completely misguided. Yeah.
It's like should be that it is the choice to live a certain lifestyle that kind of makes you a monk, rather than you live a certain lifestyle just because.
But the difference between like kind of formally doing it is, again, it is something that you can sort of that you can't really lie to yourself. Like if you say, I don't want to ordain because I have a good environment here and I have a secluded property and so on, and I can live as a layman, restrained in practice, fine. But as I said, more often than not, they will be rooted in some sort of fear and still having a thread of safety, like, well, if it doesn't work out, I can still do this. So from that point of view, actually formally ordaining will cut that thread. And if you're honest, that would be obvious, and then you would know whether you should or not. But if you genuinely know what the practice is, genuinely just need a seclusion environment to amplify it, then again, you could stay a layman or change your lifestyle, as in layman not formally ordained, and still not live like a householder either. But for that, already, some wisdom is quite necessary. Some authenticity and transparency would be mandatory.
But you could probably say it's mandatory in all cases, because if you're not
yes.
from the beginning, then
exactly,
becoming a monk will not necessarily make you more.
Yeah.
So if I can paraphrase, is it about what will make me give up the thing that I would be holding on to, or what would be putting me into the situation that forces me to practice more seriously? Yeah.
And sometimes, like, that's obviously if things would be clear on that level. Sometimes it might be a bit of both. And in those cases, you just need to kind of try and think like, okay, in the long run. So, yes, I'm afraid to give up a household life, but at the same time, I'm afraid if I don't become a monk and stay a householder, so what do I do here? Well, again, don't cover up that situation. Endure it without necessarily making your current household environment worse. Because sometimes people are like, oh, I want to ordain, but if I don't ordain, I have to get married. It's like, well, no. You can still live and practice the Dhamma accordingly, even without wearing robes. So you don't need to go the other way. But if it feels like it's either or, means, okay, well, that's really the problem. It's not that you're not a monk yet or that you're still a household. The problem is that you can't restrain yourself and sustain that middle. Like, yes, you don't need to become a monk, but that doesn't mean, oh, but I can, so because I can't become a monk for some reason, that means I can now engage in sensuality without any kind of responsibility or fault. And that's, I think I even did that talk once, like, you know, even if Dhamma is your goal, even if you're not a monk, there is no excuse to go to sensuality. It just isn't. But that is sometimes taken like, no, I really want to become a monk, but you know, some say like I can't get a visa or something like that, or my mother's sick, I have to look after her. Some externally valid reason that currently prevents you becoming a monk. So in the meantime, oh yeah, I'll find a partner and marry and so on. It's like, well, no, that's now a completely separate set of decisions that you don't need to engage either. You don't need to engage with them either.
Yeah, because I mean, let's say, for example, let's say you had the suttas or you had access to teachings, but there were no order of monks.
Yeah.
You'd still have to, you'd be forced to actually try and do something yourself about it.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, it reminded me of Kierkegaard actually, the Christian philosopher, that he, you know, his life.
Well, that was exactly the decision he made.
Exactly.
That was exactly the point that he arrived at it. Like, wait a minute, I want to be an authentic philosopher, true to the pursuit of wisdom, and at the same time I'm getting engaged in planning a family and a governmental position and work, whatever was lined up for him. And then he realized, well, no, if I want to do this, I have to say no to this. Many of them wouldn't. Many of them would have be quite content in perpetuating the idea that they are here in pursuit of truth and clear philosophy while doing very mundane sensual things, because many of them would not have been honest as he was. So then he broke off the engagement, gave everything up, and then just continued pursuing wisdom in a very painful manner for the rest of his life. But he didn't compromise. And that's quite commendable.
Yeah, and somebody who does that, like for him, he was really, I was thinking about it, he was really, you know, alone. You know, he had nobody else who was kind of confirming or no external structure to tell him that what he was doing was the right thing. It was really just... On the subject also, it reminded me of that, again, something that I'd read often in the suttas but had not paid that much attention to, like when he says, I did not go forth from this household life for the sake of robes, bowl, medicine for the sick and so on. I went forth because I was pursued by suffering, old age and death, and I thought, so I used to kind of think of that in the sense of people just kind of get greedy for these things or these kind of external whatever, but it can also be that you have all of these things that you have to get and do and accomplish and go to this place as a monk and everything, that it can kind of end up obscuring your basic reason for doing those things in the first place.
And result in complacency then. Like, you have a big community, big place, all registered, everything fine, institution, all settled, supporters, you do your duties, you teach, whatever else, and you go through these routines, and again, it's all going to be rooted in just establishing that external sense of safety, which is no different than that's the whole point of a household life. So although you're wearing the robe, the principles of a household life still apply to you. So but again, that's like for everyone to see for themselves. Like, sure, you could have a relatively accurate guess and speculation about other people's motives, if you see how they behave and so on. But overall, fundamentally, it does come down to every individual for himself. Needs to know that, needs to be clear about it, because it's not necessarily in and of itself a bad thing. As the Buddha said himself to Mahakassapa, said, "Why do you live in the hard forest? Come with me. Plenty of food, plenty of nice lodgings, plenty of fancy silk robes or whatever else." But he says, no, I actually prefer this. I want to do it. So externally, yeah, you might think, well, you must not never live in these suitable circumstances or environment, but that's not guarantee. That's not a sure symptom of an underlying problem. And sometimes equally, yeah, people can go and live in the rough forests and so on for wrong reasons. Having said that, rough forests, even for wrong reasons, are less likely to give rise to unwholesome states than the soft, pleasant, agreeable, safe conditions would.
Where is your sense of safety?
Yeah. Or like, are you still sort of taking it for granted that because you shouldn't have a sense of safety upon anything. That's when the Buddha says in the suttas, when the monk realizes nothing is worth holding on to, nothing is worth acquiring and regarding his mind. That's why I'm unsafe. Not because I haven't found safety from all the threats. No, it's because I'm making myself liable to threats. So then that's the true safety, when there's nothing that you need for your safety.